Hello, welcome back to Print Island and to the Lighthouse. My name is Richard Askam. I am, as you know by now, the Lighthouse Keeper here on Print Island. It's summer on Print Island. In fact, I think it's summer in most places apart from where it isn't. So I've moved downstairs into the basement from the Lighthouse because it's just too hot, if I'm honest. I mean, the Lighthouse has turned into a greenhouse and yeah, I can't deal with the heat at my age anymore. So I've come downstairs. It's a little bit cooler. I've got a nice breeze blowing. I've got the wind in my hair, or certainly where it used to be. And yeah, all is good with the world. And I'm joined today by the very distinct and casual looking Mr. Darin Painter. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. I've been excited to do this. I'm a big fan of yours and the show and what you're doing. So, and I can see that it's windy. I think it's breezy down there in your basement. Yeah, I feel like I brought the appropriate shirt for the Lighthouse.
It's good. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah. And in fact, if you just raise up in your seat a little bit, Darin, we can get the full effect. And look at that. It's floral. It's stripy. Man alive, you are a fashion guru.
If you would see my closet, you would laugh at that because I have like 3 shirts.
Okay.
I have like 3 shirts, and I have like.
You don't have to agonize over choosing that long, then, which is good.
No.
That's good.
No.
That's good. Well, listen.
This is welcome. Thank you.
Welcome to Print Island. It's lovely to have you here. You and I were together in Slovenia recently. That's why I've got my Slovenia mug today in homage to the Dscoop event that we were both at. But if there is anybody in the world, and I can't believe that there is, Darin, but if there is anybody in the world that hasn't got a clue who you are, just give us the 30-second flyby.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Darin Painter. I have been covering the print industry in various forms since 1999. Upon graduating college from Ohio University, Go Bobcats. Editor-in-chief for 7 years of Print Solutions magazine. Anyone who's familiar with like the distribution side of the print world, acronyms that you may be recognizing are PSDA. That whole world was born from like the business forums industry and had a series of evolutions. So I covered that world for a while. And then in 2005, because of the love of a woman, Richard, I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, primarily just for the weather, and started my own thing. So I've been operating a freelance writing and editing business called Writing Matters since then, where I sort of decided and learned that in addition to writing about companies, I could write for them once I sort of knew what made them tick. And so I feel like half of my world now could be like spelled corporate writer, WRITER, still doing like long form business profiles in magazines and publications, and with Dscoop, which we can talk about. And then like half of my world is like corporate writer, RIGHTER, where I'm trying to help them get better at what they do with communication and strategy and so forth. So I love both sides of that world. But I just love storytelling, and my role at Dscoop is just simply that word. It's storyteller, and yeah, we can get into that. But so that's it. I'm sitting in a sort of a makeshift room in my house in suburban Cleveland, where I operate this sole proprietorship. I love what I do, and I love what you do too. I think I might be asking you a couple questions in this conversation.
Fine. Yeah, no, that's fine. The thing I love about the world that we occupy, Darin, is the opportunity to have so many wide and varied conversations with so many different people. And conversation, as we all know, requires a to and fro. So I'm perfectly happy if you've got questions for me. You said, of course, there that you were in your home in Ohio. Of course, you're not. You're here with me in the Lighthouse on Print Island.
That's true. Yeah, I brought my SPF 75.
A mystical place, which somebody asked me the other day, where is it? And my answer was, it's wherever you need it to be. And
the sun never sets. Sun never sets on Print Island. I love what you're doing. Yeah.
And actually, I would take a little bit of task with what you just said in terms of the differential between the writer and the writer, because I actually think it's the same thing. What you are very good at and incredibly articulate with are the words that we use to describe various situations and stories and problems and issues, and everything in the world and I include everything in the world, can be improved and solved with better communication. And you are one of those verbose people that knows those words and can use those words. So I don't see the distinction between being a writer and a writer. I think it's the same thing. Is that fair to say?
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for the compliment. I couldn't agree more. In fact, and I'll add a layer to that. You know how like there's like kind of a lazy sentence construction that we've probably seen, everyone watching has probably seen in newspapers, journal articles, that kind of thing, that kind of starts with like, oh, there's never been a more important time to ... You know, like there's never been a more important time to understand the nuances of the labels and packaging industry. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? Or like there's never been a more important time to boost your company's culture, to make your... No, that's not necessarily true. You know, the things that were true in 15 BC could be as true now in some of those cases.
It's well, a bit like the overuse of the word literally. It literally blew the roof off the stadium.
Right.
No, it didn't. Yeah.
But I have an idea that I think there is something that has never been a more important time to, and I wanted to talk to you about that because it coincides a little bit with what you just said about the writer-writer distinction.
Go for it.
I don't think there's ever been a more important time to have a genuine voice. So in a world where every single business and every single person could be his or her own publisher, and should be, right? We woke up to that world, a dial, not a switch, but like over the last, just 15, 20 years. And now with AI, sort of, I think, controlling the airwaves, especially on LinkedIn, it's just plainly obvious, I think, which businesses and which people have become better editors than others. There's a certain sameness to the like the din of communication now that kind of drives me crazy. You know, like I hop on LinkedIn and the sort of the first sentence in people's big long posts sound exactly the same as the other 5 I'm going to scroll down to. And I think there's a real danger there. I kind of wondered what your take was on AI and the idea of a voice. Because I don't think there's ever been a time, like a more important time for companies in the print industry to develop, hone, articulate, and edit and present a genuine voice. What do you think about that?
I think that's a really good point. And although I'm a fan of the advent of AI, I'm also a fan of the previous AI, which was actual intelligence. And I think a combination of those two things, Darin, as a toolkit for life, a little bit like when everybody ran towards digital marketing thinking, brilliant, we don't have to ever do traditional marketing ever again, which was nonsense and was proven. And you know, there's an old expression, isn't there, that somebody do everything in moderation. You know, so I think the risk is a lot of people run towards something that allows them to be lazy. But because it stands out so quickly and obviously to the majority, all they're doing is badging themselves as lazy. And the word authenticity is used an awful lot in our world. But I think the authenticity of anybody who claims or thinks that they have a voice is not their opinion, it's somebody else's. A bit like saying, you know, a bit like saying, "Oh, I had a great time at dinner last night," and who were you with? Right. Oh, I don't know. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't talk to anybody. And you go, okay, you know. So it's a human trait, Darin, isn't it? That some people, and I include you and me in this sweeping statement, are lucky to have been born with the way that their brain is wired to their mouth or to their hands for writing, to use the vocabulary that we were all taught, and some of us chose to forget. And I think AI is a complement to that, but it isn't a replacement for it. And in no way can it turn somebody who's not good at communicating into communicating, because if they only use AI, they are proving that they can't. So in many ways, it's almost like the prover. Does that make sense?
Totally. And it's getting, like, to use a bad baseball metaphor, I feel like it's getting everybody to third base. Like everyone starts with a triple. AI is so good at saving time and so many other things. it's just getting that extra 90 feet from third base to home that I think requires like a honing. And but I feel like the heavy lifting in a lot of cases is so much faster now. But yeah, I'm sort of awestruck at how many people don't spend time or energy getting from third base to home. Everyone's just stuck on third there.
That evolution is never not true. In terms of speed, because we could go back to raw meat to, we've invented fire, let's try cooking it. We could go back to
right.
Cars seem to go quicker than horses. Electricity seems to be better than steam. So all the way through our history and through evolution, there has come along something that has improved our lives. And improvement in our world right now is improvement in time. We put so much value on time that if something comes along that saves it, that is effectively the messiah, as far as a lot of people are concerned.
Yeah.
What it can't do is replace this. And it's the one thing that keeps us and hopefully will maintain us at the top of the food chain is the ability to talk to each other, is the ability to read whether what we're saying is true and meaningful and authentic and genuine. And I think in any industry, you say the print industry, but I think this is true of pretty much every industry that requires a super degree of communication, that it has to be believable. Otherwise, it's just more guff. Yeah. That you empty into your trash, when all the leaflets arrive on your doorstep that somebody's done nothing about and just press the generate button. It's just all guff, and we're pretty good at sorting that out.
Yeah, at a time when dozens and dozens of leaflets are coming at you in different ways all of the time, every second, it's very difficult to be noticed in that world. One thing I appreciate so much about you and your work and your career, is the idea that to reach the receiver of that piece of communication, it takes emotion, it takes a genuineness, but it also requires you to understand that other person, what that person needs, thinks, feels, not just the person's name as the famous Coke bottle the project did, but like what that person would feel like when they received a personalized piece. So, I mean, I guess this maybe is a segue to the idea of personalization. I just kind of wanted to talk about that with you. I can't imagine talking about personalization with anyone else who would be better suited to have this discussion. But I was driving down the highway the other day, and there was a billboard, and I was reading. It was good. It said whatever it said. I kind of wondered, are we ever going to enter? How soon will it be when we enter a world where that billboard knows that I am driving down the road and might have a personalized message for me, or maybe in a smaller scale, something would be so personalized. Is there? And this is why I want to talk to you about this. Maybe this is a zoomed out weird question. Do you think there's a theoretical limit to the power of personalization? Is there at some point, is it possible that there would ever be too much, or am I crazy?
Well, it depends how you define personalization and understand what it's for rather than what it is. And and I've spoken about this at length over the years to bored people rigid with my theory. So here we go again. But I think personalization is too broad a term for something that really at its heart conveys emotion. And that whole idea that I buy you a gift, I know what it is, but I still stand there to watch you unwrap it because I want to see the look on your face. So it was never about what I gave you. It was all about what it meant. So if you define personalization at its truest form in that emotional transfer between two human beings, how that is done and why it is done are very, very different reasons. But what it's for, I think, is always quite clear. You mentioned billboards there, and I guess, how far do you go with this? Well, I would go with safety, because if the technology exists to read your number plate, the technology exists to read your face. So if you're driving down the highway at whatever the speed limit is, Darin, because I know you're a sensible driver, and up 100%. Flashes,
never go
up flashes, hi Darin, and you go, look, there's my name. Oh, okay, there's the moose that I didn't see coming towards me. So there's a sensible limit, which I don't sign up to because I don't do sensible, but you can understand the logic in that. I don't think there is a limit because There hasn't been a limit since we started talking to each other, when it moved on from grunts. And even though we understood what those grunts meant, and I'm talking about Neanderthal times for those that wonder what the hell I'm talking about, since we've had the benefit of language, we've used it. And still body language, it doesn't require vocabulary. It requires a feeling that that I'm being genuine when I do something that you will like. The use of your name, as I've said a million times, is the least personal thing about you. The stuff that we know about each other as human beings is where personalization sits. So as long as we have those emotional relationships, Darin, I don't think there is a limit.
20 or 25 years ago, though, whenever you were asking the question, what if every wine bottle had a different label, was a completely revolutionary thought, which is crazy to think that was just 20, 25 years ago, but it was true, wasn't it? Like we lived in a world of automation and scale, and we still kind of do. And then there's a side of printing where we can speak one-on-one with people, which is so cool, which is the world I play in when I'm writing about companies. But when you were at the forefront, that must have been an exciting idea.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for reading the book. Appreciate that. Secondly, I've said this a number of times. It was born out of necessity, not out of invention. Because like any businessman, I was running a business that was under threat, and I needed to find a way to alleviate that threat and get everybody paid that month and pay the bills. And what can I do that's different? So yes, it was creative necessity rather than invention, I would say. And of course, it turned into what it turned into. And I'm very proud and very, very fond of that fact. And it's kept me clothed for the last 25 years. So thank you for that.
Book, you mentioned the book, which is your name here, which is I can't wait till it comes out. I'm looking forward to hearing the book too on the audio version. I was thinking about the book, and I wanted to get your take on something, because this kind of relates to what I do at Dscoop. I'm now a big believer that every good story has like a second layer of truth. So, a magazine article or an online article about a Dscooper who's doing well and sharing an idea or something. Maybe that story is about growth in labels and packaging, but it's really about perseverance, maybe. There's a story about X, but it's really about hope. And I love finding that second layer of truth, like glomming onto it and developing narrative and stories around those themes that like sort of get us up in the morning, And I feel like your book is a perfect example of that. It's not real, in my opinion, it's not really a book about how digital printing evolved. It's about connection. Connection with the idea of emotion, connection with the idea of communication, connection with the idea of your father. And I love that about it. But I just kind of wanted to grab your take on that thought, that good stories aren't just about X, they're really about Y,
Yeah. I'm sitting here smiling because I know what I'm about to tell you. And this was a story. Well, the proof point of that was pointed out to me about a month ago, actually, by my sister-in-law, of all people, we've been friends for 40 years, but she's my sister-in-law too. So we're friends and family, which is kind of nice. And we were both stood at a party. We were both in fancy dress, so that's always a good start to any conversation. And we were both completely sober, which made an absolute change. And she said to me about this book, to your point, and forgive me because I'm about to tell you something that's actually really emotional. In the book, and you mentioned about my father there. He died in 2001 before I'd done anything, and all I did while he was alive was work for him and keep that business warm while he was alive. And by the time that he'd passed away, I hadn't done any of the things that I've subsequently done. And my sister-in-law stood there with a straight face and said, "This book is a love letter to your father for all of the things that you've done that you would have liked him to see but couldn't." And I sat there and went, wow, I had not thought that for a second. So it wasn't written with that intention in any shape or form.
Yeah.
For me, it was almost a glossary, a history of stuff that I've done, which is what I was asked to do, by the way. It wasn't my idea to do this. It was somebody else that asked me to do it. And then you sit there and go, oh yeah, okay, I get that now. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The subtext for anything, and we can point this back to you, the work that you do with the writing that you do. I love the way that you write, but I also know that you're saying something that somebody's asked you to do, but you're meaning something at the same time, and that therein, I think, lies the skill that AI doesn't have. That's the actual intelligence that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate that story about your father. I think you did him justice, and I am kind of a believer that maybe he does know what you've done since 2001, and I'm sure he's proud of that work that you've done. I think there's another element to this conversation which is kind of interesting. I think in our work, which is I think there's an active listening. Like a sort of a almost like a feeling of pause and contemplation and introspection that has to happen in order to get to that second layer of truth. You didn't intend to write a love letter to your father, in a very small way. I don't intend to write about perseverance or hope. When I start, I don't know what the story is often. I just know that this company grew 25% and I get to figure out why. Mm-hmm. I love that. Like I love the energy and of curiosity, and to try to pick people's brains and really get to the idea of why that growth happened. Sometimes it's because they hired Steve in the mailroom. Sometimes it's because they decided to get together, and really talk as a team about their mission. Whatever that is, the story then becomes less about the entity. It becomes less about XYZ Company Incorporated. And it becomes about Steve and Tim and Carol. And I think that Dscoop does a great job of that, of talking about the people, not the company. The idea that we've coined it of like Dscoopers. I want to amplify human beings that make the company grow. And we made a strategic decision a few years ago to do that, to highlight the human element of growth, to amplify people's strengths in a way that makes the company look good. And I really feel like that was one of the best moves we've made on the Dscoop content side. Because you could attack stories any way you want, but I feel like there's a resonation when you're talking about the why behind a person, their hopes, their dreams, their foibles, their failures. There's a human element to that, and that comes through in your book so well too. But I don't know if we're always successful at that. But I feel like that's one of our missions at Dscoop is to actively listen first, and then try to amplify people's strengths in a way that will resonate with others. Because really, when it comes down to it, like we publish a lot. I think we just published our 1000th piece on dscoop.com a couple of weeks ago. So that's a lot of copy. That's a lot of letters. There's a ton of subjects and predicates. But what I love about the way that Dscoop handles content is that each of those, some are better than others, but many of those are focused on what decision was made by a human being that mattered, that can now be shared. We are a community, so we already get, so it's a defined audience that we talk to, which makes like the writing easier. We can get into that too, but yeah, just kind of wonder what your thoughts are there about the idea of when you see writing in the industry, how much weight should we be putting on that human aspect, I guess?
Well, in theory, a lot, but I suppose you need to determine before that who it is that's writing to you or speaking to you, or so on and so forth. And I do think we're in an era where an awful lot of people have forgotten that you've got more ears than mouths, and you should do twice as much listening as you do talking. And we all know the people that love the sound of their own voice, and as a result, don't really listen to what's going on around them. Just say what they'd like to say or like to be heard, and then assume that that's content. And it really isn't. It's a bit like moving quietly and slowly away from the drunk guy at the bar. Again, well, it's been lovely, nice to meet you. But so I think.
Wait, is this why people leave me at the bar?
The importance of this era, particularly when there are so many ways, and you said it at the top of the call, that really anybody stood anywhere with a mobile phone is a broadcast media these days. So that's which is fine. I've got no problem with that. But you then have to be mindful of, is what you're saying what somebody wants to hear? I was taught this a long time ago, Darin, when I first got into public speaking, that the only job of the speaker is to be heard. So you have to find the way that people wish to listen to you. That's the same with reading. That's the same, the principle is the same. Communication has to be something that people want to receive. And I think there's a risk in the age that we're in, that there's too many people saying, and another thing, listening, reporting the voices in their head rather than listening to the world around them and getting some consensus on that. Right. One of the things that Dscoop do particularly well, and also I would say Print Island, I would say that, wouldn't I? But is to bring a variety of opinions and a variety of perspectives. So probably a single goal. That single goal is to grow the industry. That's a great strategic goal to have. But there's many ways that can happen. But it starts with listening. And I think Dscoop do that particularly well. It's one of the reasons that I've enjoyed working with them for the last 10 years in the bits that I do. Which is, just showing off with a microphone, basically. But I think
you do
it. Don't be nice about me. I think that's true.
Listen, you're really good on the mic, but one of the other things that you're really good at is passing the mic, like which you've done now to everyone from students. I love the Talk More Print podcast, to a bunch of other voices, and what you're building with Print Island is just. It's fantastic in the terms of the breadth of perspective. I appreciate that so much. One thing I'm struggling with, and I think the team struggles with at Dscoop, is a lot of people think that Dscoop is a single event. That the entirety of Dscoop is 3 days.
Yep.
During the year, because it's sort of synonymous with
you can have the rest of the year off.
We have. Yeah, that would take that deal. Yeah. No, I wouldn't. So it's been a challenge, I think, on the marketing side of Dscoop and the content side to keep hammering home the idea that it's a 24/7 idea sharing community. And the people who get that and are engaged with that then quickly are able to benefit from it. But I think we still struggle with that concept, with that idea that people tune in to Dscoop, at a certain frequency during the show month. And that's changing. I think that's changing, but man, it's been like a dial, not a switch,
I do, and I think it starts with, and I have a particular bandwagon about this, Darin, that we need to update the language around things in order for people to understand what they actually are. And because we use old parlance all the time to describe things, people go, "Oh, I know what that is." So you say the word show, people hear the word trade show. I don't need another trade show in my life.
Yeah.
What it actually is a members conference. If you were a shareholder, it would be an AGM. If you were whatever the truism is that it describes, show isn't the right word. So, and in an era where people are cutting back on travel and cost and expense, I don't need another show in my life. But then you go to the event, and I was with you in Slovenia. Did I mention the mug? It's far from a show. What it is actually the most perfect opportunity to communicate with fellow professionals across the industry that all share that strategic goal of growth, and to call it a show. Well, let me be cruel. If it was a trade show, it's not very good, because
that's right.
It's small. It's a very small exhibition, very focused. If you were an exhibitor that wasn't anything to do with the Dscoop world, you'd think, why would I want to be at that? It's because it's not a show. So I think we need to get away from using old expressions to describe new phenomena. And Dscoop as an organization, and I had Larry Vaughan on Print Island a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about
that show. Yep.
The foundation of Dscoop, and actually that founding principle still exists. It's evolved, and like any organization, you should try different things. But the one thing that you've never been is a trade show. So why talk about it that way? That's my view. I would find better. And if only we knew people that did words, that could find a better way. That could find a better way of explaining to people what it is, because I think a lot of it gets lost in translation.
Yeah, I think you're right. Fortunately, we've been able to grow the number of people who view Dscoop as a year-round community, and that's been really fun.
If you remember, Darin, by the way, this isn't to members. I know members know exactly what it is and what it's for. I'm talking about the people that go, "Well, what's Dscoop?" Yeah, and if it's that classic thing. Say, "Well, I don't want to be a member of that club. I want to be a member of this." So understand it. Criticize it, fine, but criticize it if you understand what it is.
Yeah, I when we were in Slovenia and in different Dscoop Edge shows in the past, it's one thing to be part of that group. So I'm technically a freelancer who Dscoop uses frequently every day for stuff. So, but I'm wearing the same color jersey as my global teammates. When you go to an Edge conference, am I biased or correct in thinking that there is a real spirit there of communal idea sharing that is a little bit strange?
Well, you're both, which is brilliant, but it's a question of which one is you put in order, because I think you're correct, which makes you biased, because it's like being in the know.
Okay.
You get it. You come away from those things, and and I've been coming to these events now for nearly 10 years. It'll be 10 years next year since I did my first speech at a Dscoop event, and from then to now, I'm still struck by how willing people are to share best practice. The whole point of a user group membership organization is to involve everybody. That's what you get back for your membership. Whatever it costs, that's what you get back, is the opportunity to evolve. So I think when you experience that firsthand and you come away with that lovely feeling that, even like, oh, do you want to jump in my taxi to the airport? Nobody does that at trade shows. 1,000 taxis arrive at an airport because nobody's collaborating. They're not even thinking about it. I shared a cab back to the airport in Slovenia with a bunch of people from HP, unbelievably hungover. I won't tell you who they were, but and we just chatted like human beings do, and we're very good at chatting like human beings. And I think it's that if you're looking for a tangible from that event, that conference, that AGM, not trade show, is people become people. They stop trying to be professional veneer that the world tries to. We all try to do it. We all try to put this front. They don't. They drop that instantly. You can't be that drunk and still be professional. It's impossible. Then as a result, you come away, and John Tolley used to say this to me, you come away with one thing that could change your life, but you don't do that unless you use 2 ears and slightly less mouth.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun. And I feel like from a marketing side, it's not like we're creating that. We just get to cover it.
Yeah.
Those shows are
sort of baked in now, isn't it? To the which is why so many people come.
Absolutely.
And the excitement of coming back to a European event this year after 7 years off due to various reasons, COVID being the main one, was tangible. People were genuinely excited to be back in the room, and they all see each other at trade shows. By the way, this is not like it's the first time I've seen you for 7 years. We're talking about people in the industry that know each other very, very well. But in that moment and in that space that you've created as an organization, first of all, it's safe. Second of all, it's trusted. Third of all, it's genuine. And I think going back to what we said at the top of the call, if you can achieve genuine, then people put a huge high value on that. And that's something that I know you and I share in common in terms of our workers doing this. I mean, this is a classic example, isn't it, of two podcast hosts walk into a bar. I wonder what could happen. Well, they interview each other. That's what happens. But how nice is it to be able to have this freedom of conversation?
For sure, and I appreciate the forum that you've built so much for that. By the way, you beat me in the cool microphone category. I thought I had a cool microphone, this blue one, but like, look at yours, dude. I gotta step up my game. One other thing I've noticed about the print. I'm trying to zoom out in the print industry a little bit with you. One other thing I've picked up on, and I just wanted your opinion on, especially over the last several years, has been what I think is a really cool narrative around mindfulness, like around like positivity and energy and mindfulness. I'm thinking maybe specifically of the Sheet for Brains group that was born out of Dscoop, but also like the more keynotes now are talking about soft skills, and I think I've turned into a pretty big mindfulness guy. Like the idea that everyone has amazing strengths that they get to amplify, but it starts with like a willingness to intentionally think about that as like an energy source for doing all of the things then that are best practices. So yep, there's all these kinds of things you can do with your press. You can maximize this, you can amplify that, you can structure your team in a certain way. You can do all of the things that a business book, an MBA degree, and a consultant would tell you. That's over here. But then there's this sort of more top layer idea that keeps popping up in people's posts and in certain circles of the industry, I think, where there's like a rational realization now that that's not always going to be great. And you might have awful days, and a positive mindset and sort of the willingness to talk about your awful days seems now like a more discussed topic than ever, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's, again, back to my point about evolution. I think this is a generational trait that is wonderfully then going backwards as well as forwards. And what I mean by that is every my parents' generation and their parents were Victorian. So they didn't, the values that they had, which were fine for the time and absolutely correct for the time. The old expression, I blame the parents, is never not true. So that those values and that behavior floods down to the next generation, and it maybe moderates a little bit and moves on and what have you. I think what's happening in our world right now is that our children's generation, my daughter's nearly 19, and they are more informed about their own mental health than anybody has ever been in the history of time. And as a result, are more willing to share what they're thinking and what they're feeling back to their parents. I could never talk to my dad like my daughter talks to me. And I'm delighted that she can, by the way, but I could never have had that conversation because he wouldn't have known what to do with it.
Same.
So here we are, as men of a certain age, getting less young as we breathe every breath, understanding more about what's important. And yes, there's the noise of the day, and yes, there's the noise of the world, and that can be good and it can be bad. As I've said a number of times, Darin, shit gets thrown into your windows every day. You've just got no idea which direction it's coming from. The key to evolving, I think, as a businessman and as a human being is understanding, okay, it's going to happen. What do I do about it when it does? And I think our children and our young people generally are teaching us more about ourselves than we could ever learn if it was just up to us. And that, for me, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, you can't read the manuscript of your book, Your Name Here, and not think that you have a really healthy self-talk.
I haven't thought of it that way.
Because the perseverance that you must have had to get through some of those down times with businesses and situations, I feel like it took an intentionality, like it had to, an intentionality that you were going to get through those things, that your positivity and heart and brain combo were going to win out over time, and they have. And I think that I'm more conscious of that self-talk now more than ever. Like the idea that things are going to be floating around in everybody's brain, and we have the ability to sort of control that dashboard, and we really do.
Yeah, and you're right, and I think we're all trillionaires in hindsight, and you turn around and look at the things that you've done and survived and got through, and at the time, it can be quite dark. I've had some dark days like everybody. I don't know whether it's intentional or whether it's subconscious or whether it's just a natural survival instinct. We are quite good at surviving as human beings. We've done it for a while now, and I think it's probably helped by the fact, and again, this is our good fortune, you and I, that we can, when we're telling ourselves stories about how you get through this, they're quite good. We're quite good at, I would say I'm an optimistic pessimist. And as a result, the words that I can use and the mantras that I can use to bring myself around, those dark days only last a day, and then the next one isn't quite as dark. So already I'm seeing that it's getting bright. So I think I would say, like you, fortunate that the stories that I can tell myself are largely laced with positivity, because they kind of have to be. Because when you choose the freelance path, you accept the fear, you accept the risk. You accept all of the things that come with that. And over here, you have people that have no idea how to do that. And yet they take a job that has about the same amount of certainty as ours does. It's just they see it differently.
It's true.
So
that's true.
And as I get, I've got one of those 0 birthdays next year, which I'm really not looking forward to. But as I approach that particular time of life, I think reflection on how you get through it is like, we didn't do too bad, really. Again, another thing I should have liked and my dad.
Your 40s are going to be fine.
Yeah,
40s are going to be fine.
If only I could remember them. Listen, we've run out of time, Darin. I could talk to you all day, every day, and I genuinely wish I could. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and honestly, I've really enjoyed this. It feels like therapy. I'll put my clothes back on now and get off the couch and leave the money at the door.
Same. Well, I have this shirt on, but I'm really wearing, like, my pants underneath are just like gym shorts, because we can do that in 2026.
Indeed. Yeah.
I have too, and I appreciate you having me on. I really respect and admire what you're doing with Print Island.
Thank you.
The perspectives and the different voices that you're giving that microphone to, just wonderful. I'm a fan, not just a guest, and I wish you the best of luck in doing what you're doing.
No, bless you. Thank you. And it's been a pleasure to have you on today, because you've done all the hard work. You asked me all the questions, so thanks for that.
Sorry about that.
If you could I've got 2 more to do later. If you could come back and do those for me as well, and I can take the rest of the day off.
Sure, no problem. I have some time. Absolutely. Take the
collaboration, you see. Collaboration right there, right in front of your very eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, Darin Painter, thank you for joining me today on Print Island. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere soon.
You as well. Thank you.